We're back on our Saturn Vue bad fuel pump relay. So we tested previously our ground pin on a fuel pump relay, and it had a bunch of resistance on it. When I was measuring today, it's like 118 ohms. So what we did, we found our ground splice. So the fuse box wire comes all the way down here to this splice, and what this is a box. It's got a bunch of ground wires that go into it and connect to each other. So we checked from here to our ground splice down there. We got 118 ohms still. So we've got a bad connection between there and there. Just to be sure, we checked from our ground splice to the negative terminal on our battery, and there was like 1.8 ohms. So from the negative on the battery to our ground splice, we know it's good. But from our ground splice to our fuse box, there's an issue somewhere, and I'm gonna guess corrosion, because this thing is not the nicest. But this customer doesn't want to spend a bunch of money. This is it's an older car. It's been sitting for a few years, so he don't want to pay to chase the problem and repair it properly. So we'll attempt to see if there's anything else that comes off that ground wire, but for the time being, we pulled this fuse box apart, and pin 6 right here where my thumb is pointing to is actually the ground circuit from that splice, and we checked from it directly, and it's still 118 ohms resistance. So I was thinking we may have something wrong inside our fuse box, some corrosion going on, but even at our pin where it comes into the fuse box is bad. And if I can flip it around, that little black wire right there, that's our ground wire. So what we're going to do is, it's not a proper repair, but we're going to tap into that ground wire, and our new wire we're going to ground to battery ground or somewhere, and see if that will get this thing going for the time being, because I'm sure it's got plenty of other problems, and this customer doesn't want to sink a bunch of money, just wants it to crank up. Again, I want to stress this is not a proper repair. I mean, it works, don't get me wrong. We spliced our ground wire, our new wire, and we ran it up here to the strut tower. And now we will check our ground on our fuel pump relay. That's the wrong lead. Let's try using the right lead. Now we've got 0 ohms resistance, so we should have a good ground on this pin. So what we'll do is put our relay back in, get our scan tool out, and command the fuel pump on, and we'll go back here and check for power. Alright, so we have got our wires, if I can get y'all back here to see, pigtailed into our fuel pump connector. I know it's not the best shot, but with our scanner, if we command the fuel pump on, our test light lights up. So everything is working back to the fuel pump. Hopefully the customer will bring us a fuel pump soon, and we can get this thing out of here. So hopefully that helps y'all a little bit. Maybe, maybe not. So just as a recap, what we did, we knew our fuel pump wasn't working. We unplugged the fuel pump, checked, no power. Came up here, our fuel pump relay was not clicking or doing anything. So we swapped relays, no go. Got to checking, didn't have a good ground. So we bypassed the ground, put a new ground up here on the strut tower, and then we went back there. And before we went back there, I actually went back here and it still wasn't working. And I had to swap out 2 or 3 relays, and I finally got one out of this fuse box that worked. So he's definitely got some fun on his hands, but swapped the relay out, went back there, boom, we've got power to the fuel pump. And remember in the last video, we tested the fuel pump, and it had like 1 or 3 ohms of resistance in it. So the fuel pump is shorted out as well, and I've actually got a picture of it. This is the fuel pump we pulled out that the customer said was new. It does look new on the top side. The connectors, it's definitely been replaced. My theory on this is the car quit running, somebody replaced the fuel pump, it still didn't work. So they parked it for a few years, and then the customer stated that he thought the computer was bad. But come to find out from sitting, the fuel pump was bad, and then he also had that fuse box issue.